cannot develop, because if you develop, it will cause a negative impact to the environment and also negative impact to the society. So if that is a situation, meaning that you cannot, develop, you cannot improve your economic activities. So in a simple term, I would say we just like call tree huggers lah, yeah. So we just hug the trees and doing nothing. So that is not possible, because for a developed country like Malaysia, we need to grow in terms of our economy, and in order for us to grow, we need to expand our economic activities like industries and manufacturing and other things and other activities. Yeah, so we need to ensure that wherever we enlarge and expand our economic activities, we are being a responsible corporate citizen. So then I go into the definition of sustainable development, meaning that when you are doing your activities sustainably, you will be a responsible corporate citizen. You put emphasis on environmental conservation, and you also bring the positive impacts to the society and community where you operate. And for your information, when you talk about sustainability, you cannot run away from asking this question. So when you talk about sustainability, what is the top risk or what is the top impacts in terms of environmental management system? I think all of you would agree with me. I am not sure about Perlis, but I am now working in Kuala Lumpur, and I stay in Selangor. So I have to travel like about 27 kilometers from my home in Shah Alam to Kuala Lumpur in my office. But can you believe it? For me to travel to 27 kilometers, I have to take 2 hours to reach from Shah Alam to office, and another 2 hours back from office to my home. And why is this normal situation for Kuala Lumpur? Because now is the raining season. You can see that every time when it rains, there will be a flash flood in Kuala Lumpur. That's common, okay? And why is this flash flood becoming rampant and rampant? Because it's of climate change, yeah? Because last time, I don't know whether you can still remember this. I think Puan Farida and maybe your other lecturers will agree with me that for us, we only talk about monsoon when we talk about the end of the year. Like when we say, okay, November or December is a monsoon season. We don't go to Cameron Highland because it's going to be wet and it's not safe for you to travel there, right? But now it's no longer monsoon. You find that the climate is so rampant and it's so awkward. Anytime you can see heavy rain and flash floods everywhere. So climate change is one of the threat that is becoming more and more serious that we can imagine. And for information, I may touch this a little bit. Climate change has created this new terminology called climate refugees. What you refer to climate refugees is that it's not about war refugees only. Climate refugees means that those people who lost their home because of the rise of the sea level. So these are the climate refugees. So it's going to be serious. And especially if you're going to graduate and work with a company that is located somewhere near the shores. So you need to take this into account, because when you do risk assessment, you need to also include climate change in your risk assessment, yeah? So that's something that I'm giving you some tips for as an introduction. And just to give you a little bit, when you talk about sustainability, the initial stage when sustainability was being discussed at international level was in 1997, where they have organized what they call the Kyoto Protocol. And in this Kyoto Protocol, all the countries that have become a signatory of the United Nations, including Malaysia, have signed a commitment where we have all agreed that we're going to work in our own countries to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions to a level where it's acceptable. But in Kyoto Protocol, there is no goals that has been set. If you look at this was in 1997. So 18 years later, in 2015, the United Nations have come in Paris, and we have signed what we call the Paris Agreement. And in Paris Agreement, there were 196 countries that have signed this commitment, that all of us are going to work together to reduce our greenhouse gas and meet the 17 goals of Sustainable Development Goals to be achieved by 2030. So what is Sustainable Development Goals 2030? It comprises of 17 goals altogether, and they have set 169 specific targets to be achieved by all the countries that have signed this commitment to be achieved by 2030. Yeah. So just to put on the landscape of this fabric slide, you can see clearly that these are the 17 goals that I mentioned earlier. So if I go through one by one, you will see that it covers the environmental, social, and also the governance pillars. So no poverty, SDG 2 is in terms of no hunger. So SDG 3 is good health for all. SDG 4 is good quality education, like what you all are having now. You are studying university, so it's a good quality education. You have access to quality education. SDG 5 is gender equality. 6 is clean water and sanitization, because we are very lucky in Malaysia. The moment that we open the tap, we can boil the water and drink it. And some of you are very lucky that you have kowe or kuku in your home, and you can even have clean water filtered and you can drink it immediately, right? So, but in other countries like Africa and third world country, they don't have access to clean water and sanitation. Hence, there's a lot of outbreak of virus like Ebola, and a lot of unknown and unmentionable virus has been being an outbreak there because of poor sanitation. 7 is renewable energy. 8 is good jobs and economic growth. Of course, after you graduate, you wanted to secure a good job, so we need to ensure that we have economic growth on that. Innovation and infrastructure, reduce inequalities between genders, sustainable cities and communities. As I mentioned to you earlier, Shah Alam has declared that we're going to be a low carbon city by 2030. So we need to be sustainable. Responsible consumption, because we cannot be living in a lifestyle where we can consume our natural resources without control, because natural resources are very finite. So if we do not control, it's going to be finishing, in one day. So it's not infinite, it's finite. And 13 is climate action. This is what I mentioned to you about climate, global warming and climate action. Life below water, because if, let's say, for example, you go and work with industry, you will have wastewater treatment, and wastewater treatment will release the water into the river or the ocean based on standard A, standard B regulation. Then you need to ensure that whatever discharge goes into the water will affect the life below the water, the aquatic lives and biodiversity. So this is something that we need to monitor as well. And life below land and life on land is very important. The flora and the fauna. Peace and justice is more on governance and partnership for the goal. Like what we're doing now is between industry and the university is a partnership for the goal. So we're meeting SDG 17 for your information. So if I were to structure the SDGs in a very simple layman term, this is what I've drawn for you so that you can remember this in your mind. I would say that all the 17 SDGs, the governance part is at the bottom of the triangle or the pyramid, which I call the foundation. Yeah. And above the governance is environmental and social pillars. And the environmental and social pillars, I call them the main pillars. Yeah. So the environmental management system falls here, and the environmental and the social are very interlinked to each other. I normally use this hypothesis that we are the human beings, right? We are the social part. But whatever we do to the environment, negative or positive, we will get it back. I will call it cash on delivery, meaning that if you give bad impacts to the environment will give bad impacts back to you. If you give positive impact to the environmental will give back positive impact to you. I'll give you an example. Yeah? For example, if you have trees behind your home, right? And you decided to cut that tree down, what will happen? There will be a lot of sunlight, your home will be warmer, you need to on the aircon. So meaning that what I'm trying to say, whatever positive or negative impact that we give back to the environment will give it back to you. So it's either negative or positive, you choose, right? So I would choose positive rather than negative because I will get positive impacts as well. So after the foundation and the main pillars, which is environmental and social, all this will then contribute to what the businessman will talk. This is where money talks. Okay, so when now you at the university you will learn about environmental management system, but then at the end of the day, when you walk into industry, be in whatever industry you're going to work, whether it's in manufacturing, industry, public sector, whatever, at the end of the day, money talks. So your boss will ask you, okay, at the end of the day, whatever investment you're doing on environmental or social, what is the return on investment that I am getting for my industry? What is the revenue generation? What's the cost of your investment on environmental management system? So at the end of the day, as I said to you, I would like to simplify that all this works hand in hand. It builds a very strong pyramid, and at the end of the day, it will be able to help us to achieve what we call the 2030 aim, which is SDG 2030, which is not long from now. Now is 2026. Yeah. So we have only 4 years to achieve this. Yeah. So that's how it looks like, how short time flies. Yeah. So all the SDGs that I mentioned to you, the 17, if I were to group that in ESG pillars, this is how it looks like. So for environmental pillars, we have 6, 7, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And the rest goes for social and governance. So we will focus on environmental management system alone, yeah, for this time. So I mentioned to you about Kyoto Protocol, and then I mentioned to you about Paris Agreement 2015. So now I'm going to zoom down to nationally determined contribution. What I mean by nationally determined contribution is that, you remember I mentioned to you, 196 countries signed the signatory in United Nations to give our commitment that our country, including Malaysia, will take efforts to reduce our greenhouse gas emission and set a nationally determined contribution goals for the country to achieve our goal to support the 2030 goals. Yeah. So for Malaysia, we also have set our national goals. Not only Malaysia, I mentioned to you earlier, there are 196 countries who have set their own national determined contribution, or NDCs in short. Yeah. So Malaysia, for example, we have set a target to reduce by 45% of carbon reduction by 2030. This is a big goal for your information. The country cannot do it alone. They need all industries to support this goal, because if we are not doing this, of course, the country will not be able to achieve our goal. And for your information, every 5 years, Malaysia will have to report to United Nations in terms of our achievement. So these are some of the examples of other countries. Yeah. So to give you a little bit perspective, we have talked about SDGs, we have talked about EMS, we have talked about ESG as well. But what is important is that when you put all the circles together, environment, governance, and social, this is where ESG meets. So when you talk about environmental in isolation, without talking about social and governance, that's not possible. So you need to talk about all, which are interlinked to each other, and the interlink, which is a subset of the 3 pillars, is where the ESG is formed. Yeah. Right. So these are the 3 pillars of the ESG. Now I will zoom into ESG, and later I will focus on environmental. So when you look into the ESG, you can see the environmental are comprising of all the environmental aspects. I'm sure you're very aware of aspects and impacts. So environmental aspects are climate change. Do you know that we need to keep 1.5 degrees from the industrial era? And this is not very easy to do, because when you talk about industrialization, the more industrialization happen, the more economic activities happen, the warmer this world will be because of the emission of the greenhouse gas. And in short, I would like to explain that in layman term, what greenhouse gas means is like we have the atmosphere. The greenhouse gas is like a blanket. It will be a blanket that is floating between the sunlight and the atmosphere where we're breathing oxygen, and the blanket is really preventing the warming of the greenhouse gas from transaction between atmosphere and above. Yeah, so that's why our world is becoming warmer, and the impact of climate change is the rise of sea level. That is very, very important for you to understand, because that would impact industries which is located very near the shores. Yeah. Let me give you an example. For example, Petronas, they have a facility in Kerteh. So if you Google Petronas facilities in Kerteh, it's very near to the shore. So what happened is that they're now doing some climate adaptation to ensure that by 2050, the asset will not be sink by the sea level. So they're doing a lot of mitigation to ensure that risk is being mitigated. Yeah. So that's how serious climate change is affecting the industries. Natural resources, as I mentioned to you earlier, is finite. For example, let's take one natural resource that is very simple. Fossil, for example. Malaysia is a producer of fossil, or in short, we call it crude oil. Yeah. Oil and gas. So one day, do you know that based on the study, that Malaysia will be out of fossil and gas by 2040? So meaning that by 2040, if we keep on digging and digging and extract the gas and oil, we'll be out of oil and gas by 2040. So that's how the database is showing us. So how do we do to ensure that we have energy security once these natural resources, which is finite in nature, will be depleting? So that's the reason why now, for example, that our national oil gas company like Petronas is developing renewable energy, going into new energies, hydrogen technology and whatnot, which I will cover later. So natural resources is very important because it's finite resources. Yeah. Waste is very important. I think you are very fully aware that Malaysia has once in one time that has become a country of transaction, where all the waste from developed country are being transacted into our country. So that's waste reduction. Other country are reducing their waste by transporting it to our country. And what do we do about it? So that's another global issue. Energy usage and efficiency is very important. Biodiversity loss, greenhouse gas emission, as well as environmental opportunities. So I'm just touching on environmental without going through the details on social and governance. That one you can read it on your own, but my focus will be more on environmental management system. So when you talk about ESG materiality, I'm not talking about, when I talk about material, is about the importance of ESG. Yeah. So when you talk about material, there are three pillars that you need to understand: generic materiality, industry specific, as well as country specific. So when we talk about generic, when you put that into a map, this is how the generic ESG looks like. As I mentioned to you, environmental will cover like biodiversity loss, climate change, reduce carbon emission, green building, deforestation, native title, for example, orang asli, that is applicable for Malaysia, pollution matters, and reduce waste. So the rest follows. So that's generic ESG. And let me go into industry specific. So when you look into industry specific, for example, in terms of environmental, one thing that you cannot dismiss is greenhouse gas. Any industry you're going to work with, be it aviation, oil and gas, manufacturing, whatever, you will emit greenhouse gas, okay? Whether it's small or large, or which category that you're emitting, whether it's scope 1, scope 2, or scope 3. So you need to know what greenhouse gas is all about. If you're in the engineering faculty, you need to know the basic, okay? What is greenhouse gas? And then there comes methane emission. Methane is CH4, and other air emission, like for example, SOx, NOx, and others. Spills, this cause biodiversity disruption. Waste is very important because you have domestic waste, you have industrial waste, and you have recyclable waste. So you need to manage that differently. Biodiversity loss is very important because now globally we're talking about coming up with a biodiversity law. Protected areas, important for you to know which are the protected areas that you cannot disturb. And discharges to the water, because you need to understand when you are polluting or discharging your wastewater, whether you're complying to standard A, standard B, whether that's upstream or downstream. So all this you must know when you become, an engineer, when you work in whichever country, whichever industry in the future. Yeah. Okay, that's industry specific. When you talk about country specific, in Malaysia, I would like to divide. There are five major industries. So once you graduate, you're going to work with private sectors or even public sector. This will be the major industry that you will work, whether you're going to go into energy, oil and gas. Secondly, transportation, maybe logistic, maybe aviation. Yeah, so that's transportation. Industry, so you can be going to manufacturing, whether it's a small industry or SME or public listed company. Is in an industry where you have manufacturing activities, right? And then you will have the waste. Maybe you work with, for example, in the water, or like the landfill operator, the approved by DOE. So this is the waste management. Or you will work in agriculture, forestry, or land use, which we call afulu. Yeah. So whenever you go out and graduate, this will be the major industries you're going to work, and you cannot dismiss the environmental issue that you need to manage in these industries. Yeah. So that's given. So next, okay, when you talk about sustainability, I've talked to you about the environmental management system. I've talked to you about ESG. So let's recap that all these are interlinked with each other. Next, I'm going to go to the next level, which I'm going to talk to you about net zero. So I'm just going to talk a little bit on net zero, where when I don't know how many of you, I'm sure some of you have heard about this term net zero. What does net zero means? When net zero means, like, whenever you emit greenhouse gas, it's a simple mathematic. Emission minus reduction equals to offset, or net zero. So meaning that A minus B equals to C. A is your emission, where you talk about emissions. For example, let's take one industry, manufacturing, right? So you're producing furniture, for example. When you produce, you process the woods to become pallets, or the furniture, you will emit a lot of emission, greenhouse gas. So when you emit, that's A. And then you will minus by reduction. For example, you have a system where you can use cyclone to reduce the emission, or you can use whatever system in terms of engineering control to reduce the emission. So that's B. So after A minus B, you get net zero. So if your emission is equal to your reduction, then you get net zero. But that's very unlikely if you're working in industry, because you will still have A minus B equal to C, and C is not zero. So you need to offset that. So when you talk about offsetting, this is where it may involve carbon credit, which I will talk to you about this later, or you will do nature-based solution, where you will offset that with a nature-based reforestation project. Yeah. So just be clear, net zero is about emission minus reduction equal to net zero. So that's the mathematic that you have to remember in your mind. So now let's move into importance of EMS. So this is where we're going to talk about EMS in specific. Yeah. So if you look at this chart, you will see that sometimes we will ask ourselves, right? Oh, we need to know EMS because we are engineers. It's part of our syllabus. That's not correct, because, for example, statistic has shown that employees and potential employee, and even our customers who wanted to buy products and services that your company will be offering in the future, they will be asking your company, what is your practice on environmental management system? For example, when I wanted to, when I was invited to be interviewed to join a company called Vali. This is my real experience. And Vali is a Brazilian company. I have no idea what Vali is all about. So I have to do my research what Vali is all about. And I have to go to their website and I have to search what is their corporate social responsibility, what is their environmental policy, what are they doing about their environmental system. I read their annual reports when they report and they disclose about their environmental protection. So I read all this before I decided to join the company. So similarly, like you, before you join a company in the future after you graduate, I'm sure you will do the same, right? So this is a real statistic to show that 84% of employees and potential candidates who wanted to join a company, they will be, if let's say, for example, they have a choice A and B. A company A is not so good in environmental management system, B is super good. So they will choose B instead of A if they're offering the same salary, right? Um, so this is a statistic that shows, and for example, it shows that 78% of consumer more likely to work or buy from a company that support environmental causes. So this is real, and it's not something that is made up, but it's a real data and statistic. Okay. Next, I'm going to move into EMS governance. So you know about ESG, you know about the importance of environmental management system, and now I'm going to move to the next topic, which is on governance. Why governance is very important, yeah? So before I move into detail of governance, I would like to put into the picture what governance is all about. So if you put like pillars here, you have the economy, the environmental, and the social. Governance is the foundation that support these three pillars together to ensure that these three pillars are standing strong in one industry or in one company. Yeah. What is governance actually? Governance is transparency, is the policy, is the strategy that the company makes. Yeah. It's the mission, it's the vision of the company. Um, in short, I would say that in layman term, I would say governance is the compass of the company. So how many of you likes to jungle trekking? I'm not, but I know that if you enter a forest, you wanted to do jungle trekking, in order for you to keep track of where you are, you bring a compass with you, right? So this is governance. So the governance is the compass that will lead you to the right direction, doing the right thing to achieve at the right time. Yeah. So basically, this is something that you need to, to keep this in mind, that governance is the compass of your company. So when you talk about growing stakeholders' expectation, when you talk about EMS, the importance of governance, yeah, that support the pillars of environmental, economic, and social, then we ask, why are we doing this, right? Why are we doing so hard on this? The answer is this slide, is growing stakeholders' expectation. So when I say stakeholders, who are your stakeholders, right? Before I go into detail of this slide, I want to share. When you talk about stakeholders, who are your stakeholders? So these are your stakeholders, internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. So internal stakeholders, like people like you guys, you're going to work in a company, you're going to be the employees, right? You're going to be manager one day, you're going to be maybe investor, shareholder in that company, owners. You have investors, you have owners of the company, you have your management. So these are your internal stakeholders. External stakeholders are like your community where you work, your clients, your suppliers, your supply chain, your shareholders, your creditors, your lenders, finance and bankers, and the government. So these are the external. So you have to understand you have internal stakeholders and you have external stakeholders. And why these stakeholders are expecting a lot from you? Because investors, like for example, if you work in a company, public listed company, you are listed in Bursa for Kuala Lumpur, right? Kuala Lumpur Stock Exchange. So Bursa will have an expectation for public listed company for you to have a certain minimum standard in terms of environmental management system. And you are rated using the FTSE for good rating in terms of how good you implement your environmental management system. So if you're not good, you're rated 1 star. So there are 4 stars altogether. The Bursa will rate you. And if you get 1 star, nobody is going to give you money to invest. If you get 2 star, that means you are not that good yet. If you have 3 star, meaning you still have a lot to catch up. But if you at the 4 star, meaning that you are good and you are expected to maintain that, for a public listed company. So that's how the public listed companies work. Yeah, that's investors. Consumer, they will rate you based on your performance as well, right? Um, and of course, if you have a scandal that is being published in the media, for example, I don't know whether you still remember this. There was once that Nike was published as one of the company that is using that violates human rights in China. So we have a very bad image on the brand of Nike, right? For example, that's consumer perception. You cannot change perception. And regulators, for example, the government, they keep on coming out with new regulation. So you have to keep up and catch up with that changes. Directors and executive in all company that you're going to work, you have directors, you have management. So these directors and management have different expectation on your performance. So you need to meet all these stakeholders expectations. Yeah. Right. Then next, I move into why environmental governance matters for business. So when you go out there and you secure a job as an engineer or as an analyst or whatever position that you secure in the company, then you will ask yourself and your management why I need to ensure proper governance in terms of managing environmental, right? It's important because environmental governance is a risk management. Because if you don't manage environmental, you cannot measure the performance. It's simple as that, yeah. And regulatory and legal pressures. I'm sure you're fully aware that in Malaysia we have Environmental Quality Act 1967, if I'm mistaken. And this Environmental Quality Act has been revised multiple times, and it's one of the most advanced law compared to safety laws, OSHA 1994. And this is one of the most expensive and punitive law in Malaysia. So for one non-conformity, for example, if your company, you go and out there and work with a company that is irresponsible, that discharge water, which does not meet the expectation of standard A or standard B, you'll be penalized. For one non-conformity, the government can charge you 1 million per non-conformity. Yeah, so that's not cheap. Okay, so it's one of the most expensive regulation in the country, and legal pressure because like now the social media is faster than the normal reporters, right? So one person will catch you releasing water in the discharge with muddy color. They will put that in social media, IG, X, and whatever. Then you're caught. That's it. Okay. So it's a lot of pressures. Reputation and brand value, as I mentioned to you, like I mentioned to you, Nike, and sometimes you have a lot of brands as well that has been put into a very bad reputation because of mishaps and scandals related to environmental. Yeah. So later I will share with you a real example of environmental scandal that happens, and that will give you a reality checks in terms of how serious it is. Yeah. Long-term value creation, because at the end of the day, I want you to do your research after this seminar and search for me how many companies in this whole world that have exist more than 100 years. Yeah. So it's very rare that you can count with your fingers, because when you talk about long-term value creation, my question to you is, you can prove how a company can sustainable for a long-term value creation if that company can pass a 100-year birthday or anniversary. Yeah. In Malaysia, I cannot remember yet. Even Petronas has only passed like 50 years of age. I know Samdabi has crossed 100 years old in Malaysia, but the rest, you can do your own research. Yeah. So when you go into this box asking yourself how sustainability play a important role in terms of creating long-term value creation, ask yourself this: how many companies have exist for the past 100 years? Yeah. So this is an assignment that you can do for yourself. So then I will move into the industry, the importance, the governance, the risk management. So now we zoom into the polluters. So what are the industries that are actually the biggest polluter? So again, as I mentioned to you earlier, when you go out there to work with any industry that I mentioned to you, the 5 sectors in Malaysia, right? unless you plan to go abroad and work in other country apart from Malaysia. It's the same thing. It's the same industry anyway. So you'll be working with any of this industry, but bear in mind, energy is the biggest polluter. So if you work in an energy or oil and gas company, you will be required to have an understanding about greenhouse gas, about environmental management system. Is given. It's not that you enter and you'll be trained on that. No, it's expected that you know and have knowledge on that. Yeah, because 75.7% of the energy and oil and gas industry emits greenhouse gas. Agriculture, industrial processes, industries, waste management, and land use change and forestry. Uh, Let me just focus on land use change. Yeah, this is very important because people sometimes they take this for granted. Okay, for example, let me take for example Sandabi. Yeah, that's a very good example. Sandabi used to be a plantation company. Okay, so they grow oil palm, and they're the biggest oil palm producer in the whole world. Yeah, so we're glad that Malaysia or Sandabi carry the flag of Malaysia to become the biggest producer of palm oil in the whole world. But after they have planted the the oil palm will become less and less productive when the age of the trees grows longer. So it becomes less productive. And what they do is that they will convert that land, that plantation land, into a housing land. For example, for information, the house that I'm living now, I bought it from Sandabi, where it was converted from a plantation to a housing residential areas. So this is what I call the land use change. So they changed the land use purpose. The main intention was from for plantation, and they change it to residential. So when you change that purpose, there's a lot of environmental risk that you have to manage, and you have to manage it in a very delicate manner. So it's not something that easy to be done, but you need to manage that. Yeah. Okay, that's by industry. Now I zoom into by sector. So when you talk about energy, which is 75.7%, so I'm going to take that and zoom in. So when you talk about energy itself, you talk about electricity and heat comprise of the biggest emitter, which is about 30% of all emission. Where electricity and heat, the moment you switch on your laptop, to enter into the seminar, that's electricity. The moment you enter your lecture room, you on the switch, that's electricity, right? The moment you switch on the switch, emission is being emitted. So as simple as that, yeah. And so on and so forth. So this pie chart shows you the pollution section or segmentation by energy industry, where it shows that the biggest polluter in the energy and oil and gas is from electricity and heat. So although you don't see the heat coming like a smoke from the moment you switch on your electricity, your switch, but that's what happened behind the scene. Yeah. Okay, so now what I have promised Puan Farida and Dr. Wong is that I'm going to zoom and give you an industrial perspective of energy, oil and gas industry. Because remember what I mentioned to you earlier, Malaysia is one of the biggest producer in terms of energy, oil and gas. So it is very important for you to have that perspective because, for example, if you go for your industrial training, internship, or maybe you're lucky you get a job in energy, oil and gas industry, at least you have a perspective of the environmental management system in terms of the basic things, yeah? Right. So when you talk about oil and gas industry, I'm not sure whether you have a detailed knowledge about this, but I don't want, I'm very careful about this. I don't want to go into too detail, but I'm just touching the surface to give you a broad overview of this industry. So the industry is made up of three main sections. We call it the upstream, midstream, and downstream. So what upstream means? Upstream means, in simple term, to extract the crude oil from the deep sea, meaning that like for example, we extract our oil from Sabah and Sarawak, from the East Coast shore, right? So we need to create a platform, build a platform, and extract the oil from the seabed. So that's upstream, okay? And then when we extract the crude oil, we then transport that oil into the offshore, into the onshore, where we can process it. So the transportation and the storage is called midstream. And then when the crude oil is being transported and reach the onshore, so they are being processed and then they're going through the distillation and whatnot in the processing facilities. And then you get the petrol, the diesel, and you get the around 95 or 97 and whatnot that you go and purchase at the Petronas or the Shell pump and fill it into your car or your motorbike, right? So that's downstream. So all in all, when you talk about oil and gas industry, it's only divided into three mainstream. So if let's say you're adventurous, you're engineer, you wanted to be in the upstream, work in platform, so you go to upstream. So if you want to go into transportation, storage, like more on mechanical part, so you go on the midstream. But if you're really looking into facility industries, that's midstream. So being a fresh graduate, when I graduated as a chemical and process engineer, my dream was going to work in upstream, but it doesn't happen. So yeah, here I am telling you about the energy industry. Yeah. Okay. So then I'll move into the value chain. In terms of the value chain, when I try to zoom in into the value chain of the oil and gas, you can see here that how the transportation happen. Some, for example, in Malaysia is very special. We export instead of import. We export our crude oil to overseas, and overseas will process it. But in overseas, they export the crude oil, right? So they will go to the refinery, and at the refinery, for example, the closest refinery that you can go or seek for internship, for example, or work in industry, is Petronas refinery in FKTA. Yeah, so that's one example. And then you have storage and blah blah blah. And then after you have distill all the products, separated into products, and then the tanker will bring it to the gas station. So this is where you go to Petronas or Caltex or Petron or Shell, and you fill whether you want to buy RON 95 or 97 or diesel. So this is where you purchase your energy source. Yeah. So this is how complex the oil and gas system works. So I'm telling you, as an engineer, you have a lot of prospect to work in oil and gas and industry. And if you have the chance to get an internship to work in these companies, it's such a wonderful experience that you'll be getting, because you can learn a lot of complex systems in these industries. Yeah. Right. I've already explained to you about ESG, the sustainability, and I have zoomed into the energy, oil and gas industry. And for the sake that energy is the main industry that is the biggest polluter in terms of risk management on environmental. So now we move into how do we do enterprise risk management, yeah? And set this in your mind. When you talk about environmental management system, you have to set environmental management system is a risk management. It is a risk management because it is an aspect that needs to be managed as a risk, to ensure that the impacts is minimized, reduced, or eliminated. Yeah. So that's important for you to understand in your mind. Right. Before I move into risk management, I would like to explain to you why we need risk management in environmental management systems. Simply because, there has been a lot of scandals related to environmental oil spill scandal. I think you remember about the Gulf of Mexico scandals, and then air pollution. Malaysia used to have jerebu all the time, right? Every now and then we have jerebu, and they will blame Indonesia for the open burning. Indonesia will blame us, blah blah blah. It's non-stop since 1990s. That's air pollution. And then community destructions, waste management. We always blame Australia for sending their waste here, and we know nothing what to do with the waste. So there's a lot of scandals that has been going around related to environmental aspects and issues. Yeah. And I would like to show you this. I like this quote, it is cheaper to preserve the environment than to try to recreate one after it has been destroyed. So it's a very strong quote that I wanted you to carry with you, because it's always, kalau dalam medical terms tadi, we will say like it's cheaper to prevent from to cure lah, yeah. Environmental point sama, so it's better for us to take care of our health before we get this disease, right? It's the same for environment. Before we see what you see on the right here, you cannot, it's countless. How are you going to invest to bring it back like this, right? So you have to understand why it is important to have risk management to ensure that we do not turn from this green to this brown field. Yeah, always remember this. So here now I wanted to share with you a real example of an environmental scandal that happened in Brazil in 2015. This is not just a case that I plucked from the internet or Google. This is an example that I faced when I was working with Vali during this year. I joined the company in 2014, and this happened in 2015. And our Malaysian operation has to manage this, even though it happened in Brazil. It has killed hundreds of people, our own employees, when the dam collapsed upstream, and it killed the employees who were having their lunch during downstream, during lunchtime. So millions and millions of money has been spent on this, and until today, as we speak, and it's still clocking that the company is still spending in terms of rehabilitation of the community, and the management has been brought to the court and being sued until today. So I'm going to show you this video. Watch this carefully and listen to the media coverage. And this is not just an internet cutting, a snippet, is a media coverage by Al Jazeera, and it's the latest coverage. Yeah? So I want you to see this. Let me know if you can hear the voice. Yeah? If you can, please let me know. Hold on.
A catastrophe of unprecedented proportions that unleashed an avalanche of toxic waste. This was the fallout of the collapse of the Mariana Dam. 60 million cubic meters of thick, contaminated mud that left a trail of destruction in its wake along more than 600 kilometers of the Doce River and surrounding areas before eventually reaching the Atlantic. 19 people were killed, villages destroyed, land and water choked by arsenic-laced sludge. 9.5 years later, in London, the victims of that disaster are still searching for justice. Giovanna Rodriguez, who lost her 7-year-old son, carries the burden of her loss.
For 9 years we have been waiting, but we have faith that all this waiting will bring about justice for us.
The case in London is being brought by 620,000 claimants and 46 local Brazilian governments, as well as 2,000 businesses who are suing BHP. The dam itself was owned by Samarco, a joint venture between the Brazilian firm Vale and Anglo-Australian BHP, but BHP has said that it did not own or operate the dam and had no knowledge of the dam's stability being compromised. Lawyers for the victims say the mining conglomerate is downplaying its obligations.
What we've said in this case is that polluter pays. So it's something which under environmental law is uncontroversial normally around the world, where if an accident like this happens, then the company that operates it, whether they're doing it through some joint venture or subsidiary, they're still liable.
Last October, BHP co-signed a deal alongside mining giant Vale with the Brazilian government to pay nearly $30 billion in compensation. But the affected communities say this goes nowhere near the amount that's needed to repair the area after the country's worst environmental disaster. Those who rejected the deal also said not enough was going to where it was needed.
Most of this money was going to go to the federal and state government, but it was the local councils that were directly affected. The problems are there. That's why we are seeking justice in England.
As the victims' loved ones await the outcome, expected in a few months, their fight for justice continues back home among the remains of their lives before the disaster. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera, London.
Okay, so you have seen that, and I think you have an idea that they mentioned about the money that have been spent for rehabilitation is about 30 billion, but that's still ongoing. It's clocking, like the company have been bleeding because of the cost of rehabilitation, and that was 2016. So 2015, so it's already 11 years, and the legal sue is still ongoing in the high court. The president of Vale has been terminated, and he has been sued for criminal charges in the court of Brazil. So that's how serious environmental scandal is impacting your company. Yeah. So don't take that lightly, because it has happened and it continues to happen if we don't pay attention to having enterprise risk management. Yeah. So when you talk about now, you see the importance of why we have to manage environmental management system in a proper manner. A part of the governance is risk management. So you remember what I mentioned to you earlier, governance is the compass of good practices. So one of the element, the needle of that compass is risk management. Yeah. Risk management is the one that leads you to north or south. So that's how I use the analogy. Yeah. So when you talk about governance and risk management, is why it's very important. It's because when you talk about governance and risk management, it's about ensuring the business resilience. Yeah, how resilient your business is going to be in terms of addressing the environmental aspects of the nature of your business. Transparency, how transparent you are in terms of disclosing your management system when it comes to environmental. And accountability, when a scandal happens, how do you react? How do you become accountable? Like, for example, if you see the video, BHP has mentioned this is not their business. They're not responsible for it. So, but the court is saying that you cannot say you're not responsible because you have your joint venture interest in that. So, this is something that we need to understand when it comes to business. Accountability is very, very key. Yeah? Business continuity. Um, you know, uh, the business will stop to operate if there is one issue that is impacting them, right? Brand and reputation, of course, until now, if you Google Vale or BHP, it becomes like the worst company in the world. So it's a brand and reputation, as well as ensuring informed timely decision. This is very, very important. Yeah. And then we talk about integration of environmental risk. So you know that environmental risk is very key, and we know that it is very important for us to have a risk management. Then the next question is like, how do we integrate the environmental risk into the enterprise risk management? So number one is very important because, as I mentioned to you earlier, reputational damage is very, very expensive. You cannot quantify reputational damage. It goes beyond monetary. It will impact your brand. It will impact your reputation. Yeah. Loss of competitive edge, for example, if you have your competitors and you have a bad brand and a bad name in terms of a poor management of competitive in terms of environmental management, of course your company will buy from your competitor, right? For example, I think this is a public news. I think you have read about the issue on Top Glove recently in Malaysia, where they were accused of having violation of human rights in their workers camps. So they were sanctioned by the US in terms of exporting their products. So this is the repercussion to the industry. Reduce valuation, because at the end of the day, if you have a poor environmental management system, the bank will value you in a very low rating. Then of course you are not at the competitive edge to get loans from them to finance your projects. Yeah. Operational disruption, of course, if there's an issue like what I showed to you just now, Semarco Dam collapse, of course the business will stop. There will not be continuation. Even our operation in Semarco stopped until then. It has not been operating until today. 11 years ago, the incident happened, and until today, the operation has stopped for good and discontinued. So this is very important for us to understand why it is important for us to integrate environmental risk into our risk management. And then just to share with you, when we talk about integration, about risk management, what are the benefits? Yeah, I think this goes without saying. After you have watched the video, you know that, like the benefit of it is so clear, crystal clear. It enhances the investor confidence. Investors are confident that you have a proper system in place. You're managing well your environmental aspects, and you have better access to sustainable finance, because now banks are queuing to give loans to companies who are green in nature. When I say green, meaning that you have a very strong environmental management system in place, yeah? And strengthen partnership with shareholders. Of course, for example, if you're a public listed company, you have a lot of majority shareholders. Like for example, my company, Bumi Armada, we have our second biggest shareholder is PNB. So PNB, when they know that we have a good environmental management system in place, they will keep on buying our shares and keep on accumulating their shares, right? So if they know that we have poor environmental management system, of course they will sell off their shares, and we will not have a strong shareholders to hold our shares, right? And then last but not least is positioning as a responsible industry leader. Yeah, so this is very important, because when you talk about competitive edge, it's not just about how much you can sell your product. It's about how good, in terms of you play your role as a corporate citizen to conserve the environment and to enrich the lives of community where you operate. So this is this is like, okay, if you have two products, right? Two products that is selling 2 ringgit each, right? A and B. So if I know that A has a good environmental management system compared to B, of course I will buy A. It's the same price, right? So you cannot compete on the price, but you can compete in terms of your governance, your branding, and your reputation in terms of having a strong environmental management system in place. Right. When we talk about risk, you have to have clarity in mind. Risk is not just about negativity. Risk is accompanied by opportunity. So when you talk about risk is negative, opportunity is the positive part. So environmental risk comes together with opportunity. So this is the good news for you. So when we have aspects and impacts, that's risk management. But when you talk about opportunity, for example, you have a lot of emission in terms of energy, oil and gas industry, but at the same time, you have the opportunity of emerging new businesses, like for example, developing renewable energy business from your oil and gas industry. Like for example, I give an example, a simple example that you can relate to all of you is Petronas. So if you Google Petronas, now they have a company called Gentari, and Gentari has been formed. It's like a spin-off company that they have set up as an opportunity to look into green technologies. So they identify that there is a potential opportunity for them to develop renewable energy, including solar and electrification. So they form Gentari to push up or to drive that business. Yeah. So if you Google Gentari, you will know a lot of the opportunity that Petronas has emerged from the risk management that they have done on environmental risk. Yeah. So another homework for you: search for Gentari. Yeah, Gentari. All right. So environmental resilient and also adheres to industry standards. So this is very, very important. When you talk about environmental risk and opportunity, it's very important for you to understand that when you talk about risk and opportunity, there's a lot of categories: physical risk, regulatory risk, technology opportunity, market opportunity, reputation risk, and like social license. So the most important thing that you need to remember when you talk about environmental risk and opportunity, remember I mentioned to you environmental and social are very interlinked to each other. whatever you give back to environment, you get it back by the society. So this is where I'm going back to that slide. Remember that environmental risk, if you don't manage it, it will cause bad reputation to your industry, in your company, as well as it will impact the social license. When I say social license, what it means is that the community where you operate, where your industry is located, the community can have an exercise to go against your operation, and they have the rights to call for stop of work order for you. For example, if you don't have a good environmental management system, somebody catch you releasing the water pollution into the river, not complying to standard A, standard B, then they will report to DOE. DOE will come and give a stop work order to you, and your operation will be sealed until you have demonstrated that you have take mitigation controls. That is how impact social license and the environmental is interconnected to each other. Yeah. Right. Next is that I've mentioned this many times about environmental risk. I will not go into detail because I think I've mentioned this earlier. So this is a list of environmental risks. But this is most important. Based on the World Economic Forum, if you can see here, this is the data that has been published lately. This covers a survey that was done from 2024 to 2025. So it's the latest survey that has been done by WEF. If you see the risk that has been mapped, top 10 risks selected by respondent, if you can see here, they are categorized. Blue is economy, environmental is E, orange is geopolitical, societal is red, technological is purple. So let's zoom into environmental. So environmental will be the top number 2 and the top number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So top 2 and top 7. So among the top 10 risks that has been mapped as the global risk landscape, 2 of them are environmental risk. And if you zoom into this, you can see here, 14% of the respondents say that extreme weather event is related to climate change. And this one, 4% is saying that critical change to Earth system, meaning that when you talk about critical change to Earth system, is the disruption. When you talk about disruption, it's disruption of biodiversity, disruption of value chain, food chain, like fishermen are not catching enough fish in the oceans, hence the fish price is going up. When we go to the market, I don't know whether you will agree with me now. Dulu ikan kembung is 1 kilo is 4 ringgit. 10 years ago now it's like 14 ringgit in the market. That's just ikan kembung, right? You're not talking about tilapia or So the rise of this price of the fish is because of the disruption of the food chain that is affecting the food supply overall in the whole world. For example, this is interconnected because extreme weather events are causing the weather to get warm and the crops are not giving the right yield to the farmers. Hence, you're not getting the rice paddy field. If you go next to your state, Perlis next to you is Kedah, right? Why don't you ask Kedahans and say what's the crops yield in the sawah padi, right? I'm sure they will say now it's less, dropping. So this is the impact of climate change. And it has caused the critical change to the Earth system, which is disruption. And going back to what I mentioned to you earlier, whatever you give back to the environment will give back to you. So when you're giving, you're not responsible to take care of the Earth. This is what Earth is responding back to us, right? The food chain is disruptive. The fish is not there anymore to be catch and all those kind of things. Yeah. So look at this risk map. You will see that this is top global, which is very connected to Malaysia. We bring it back to Malaysia. We bring back to Perlis and Selangor, which state we are inhibiting. It's very same. It is similar. There's no change at all. It's the same thing that we can connect to our own life, right? So this is very, very serious, yeah. So when you talk about environmental risk, I would like to highlight to you there are two types of risk: physical risk and transitional risk. And what do you mean by physical risk and transitional risk? Yeah, let me do my time check. Okay, I have another comfortable 20 minutes ago. Okay. So transitional risk and physical risk. So physical risk is acute and chronic. When you talk about acute, means like you see like there's a lot of news, especially in North America, where they have wildfires, Australia, right? Uncontrollable wildfires. And last time, if you come to Putrajaya, you will see, if you go to Putrajaya to the airport, you will see a lot of wildfires in the wetland, pit fires, uncontrollable. You will see the bomba is always parking at the highway because of the wildfires all the time, 24/7. So that's wildfires. Storm and hurricane. I don't know about Perlis, but in Selangor now we have started to have storms. Suddenly you get a very dark cloud, and you have like, like rain come like cats and dogs, uncontrollable. Drought, sometimes you have morning so dry, like almost 40 degrees, and you have heavy rain in the afternoon. So it's very uncontrollable. And chronic is like, of course, this is what I mentioned to you earlier. The warming of the temperature will cause sea level to rise. Why sea level rise? Is because the ice in the Iceland are melting. So it becomes a rise in the sea level overall. Temperature increase as well as water scarcity. And it's very important for us to understand, maybe not in Perlis, but in Selangor, we used to have a lot of water scarcity. It's so chronic that we will be out of water for a week, and a lorry will come and send us water supply. That's how bad Selangor is. That's water scarcity, yeah, because somebody go and pollute chemicals in the upstream, and the whole water plant that supply to the 70% of Selangor has been polluted. So our water has been disconnected. So that's water scarcity, right? And when we talk about transitional risk, we look into regulation and disclosure. Later, I will talk to you about emerging regulation when we talk about environmental. And the emerging law that is coming up is carbon tax. I think this is another assignment that you can take back. This is what carbon tax that I talk about. Green technology and adoption, meaning that now the government is encouraging all industries to invest in green technology in your facility, and you can get tax exemption from your investment. So do a research on that as well. So maybe, who knows, if you join a company, when you graduate, you can make a proposal for green technology adoption, and you can save the company money by tax exemption, right? So do an assignment on that. Next is after I've done on physical and transitional risk, now I wanted to focus more on the methodology, the how part, in terms of doing the environmental risk assessment. The how part is divided into four stages, which is identify the risk, analyze the risk, evaluate the risk, whether it's low, medium, or high. And for medium and high, you have to manage the risk. As simple as that. Yeah. When you manage, you have to come up with mitigation controls or adaptive controls. Risk management is divided into two axes. The first axis is likelihood of the environmental issue impacting your business. And the second axis is severity of financial impact. So one is impact on environmental, second is the financial impact. So environmental and financial, quantitative and qualitative, yeah? Simple as that. So this is a show to you, the metrics of risk assessment that has been shown to map where I like this metrics. Why? Because it's very wholesome, holistic. It puts on the social, the asset, environment, and the reputation risk together in one pillar. And then you have the probability on the other axis. So you put everything together, wholesome, and then you can map them. So if you are rated in this rating under the green one, you can continue to do improvement. But if you're rated at the amber zone, you need to incorporate mitigation control. Yeah. And if you have been mapped that risk under the red zone, then you need to have that indicates you have failed to meet the screening criteria. So this is something to give you an alarming lah, macam it's like I would say that it's a traffic light to see whether you're green, amber, or red. Red, stop and do something about it. Amber, assess your situation, do what's reasonable, and green, you can keep on monitoring it closely. Yeah, so that's how it works. And you know that you have environmental aspects, you have risks. So now why is it, and you know how to do the risk management now, and you have the risk metrics now, okay? So now it's very important for you to understand why it is important to have effective environmental risk management. Why it is effective is because you need to ensure strong governance. Again, as I said, governance is the compass in your organization, and the integration into risk management framework is no-brainer, is something that you must do. And as well as to address the current risk, which is climate change for all businesses, because that's the most outstanding risk on environmental that needs to be addressed as high risk in your company. Yeah. Okay, next is that I wanted to wrap up on the risk management to flash you this slide to highlight that from EMS perspective, don't be worried about the risk and the cost, because you need to flip the chart and turn the coin around, saying that from cost and risk, you need to change into finding what is the opportunity you can find from that risk. And my call to action is very much to conclude that environmental management system is a core business driver. It is part of your strategic business plan, and you need to embed EMS into your overall business strategy, whether in Unimed, in university, or in industry, public sector, private sector. You cannot work environmental management system on its own in silo. You must integrate into your overall business strategy. Yeah, that's very, very key, important. And the benefit of it is very, very clear, is crystal clear. You need to ensure regulatory compliance tak dapat penalty from the government. If you don't comply, you can have access. The finance people will love you. They will queue to give you money to finance your business. And you have a strong name, a strong credibility. And of course, it gives you more flexibility to accelerate your effort that you can do internally for your company. And then next, I will move into, I did mention to you earlier that I wanted to flash to you some emerging technology. This is a way forward, future forward. I will not go into detail, but I would like to flash to you some of the technology that has been in research and development phase. Some of them have been commercialized, but some of them are still in research phases. So some of them are like low carbon fuels and like zero carbon fuel. And what are the zero carbon fuel? Are like the hydrogen ammonia technology. Hydrogen, I did have this conversation with Pom Farida and Dr. Wong. Hydrogen is not a new technology. It's a technology that I have been exposed to when I was doing my degree in UKM in the chemical and process engineering. So it's not new. It has been for decades. The only issue on hydrogen technology is so costly. I give you another assignment. I want you to research on hydrogen technology for NEOM. It's spelled as NEOM in UAE, where they are developing a development called NEOM in UAE, and they are using 100% hydrogen as the renewable energy fuel for transportation and logistics. So everything runs on hydrogen, taxi, like cars, everything that moves and mobilize are using hydrogen technology. So research on that, NEOM, hydrogen technology, okay? Right. Next is just to give you a little bit of what I call it, snippets. It's very interesting to learn hydrogen is not hydrogen. You have grey hydrogen, blue hydrogen, green, blah, 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 and all colors of hydrogen. And this is moving into chemical engineering, where, all these colors are produced based on different pyrolysis and chemical separation, pyrolysis, electrolysis, whatever process that you use, different process produce different colors of hydrogen, for different purposes. Right. And then you have also carbon capture and storage, where in short, what it means is that if, let's say, for example, you work with power plant, for example, TNB, yeah, let's say, Alhamdulillah, inshallah, you get a job to work with TNB. So you're a power plant. So you produce greenhouse gas here, right? And the greenhouse gas must be reduced. So what this technology does is that it capture the emission, and then it will pump it into, inject that into a depleted oil and gas field, which depleted means is an old reservoir that has no oil, is empty field. They inject that in and capture it here. But bear in mind, based on my last discussion with researchers from the University of Heriot Ward in Dublin, they did a very strong research on the strength and stability of this reservoir once you inject the CO2 inside here. They are doing research and they do claim that there is no concluding results from the research, for academic research, that confirm that this is safe for long term, yeah, meaning that it can leak, it can cause disruptions and whatnot, and can disrupt the biodiversity above the water, yeah. So bear in mind that you can do, and if you are interested, you can do another research for your thesis or your master's on the stability of the depleted oil and gas field for carbon dioxide injection. So this is another field that I think Malaysia has not advanced in terms of academic research. CCS hubs in Malaysia, as we speak, they already have developing this. Like for example, in Sarawak, they have the Kasawari CCS project. In Pahang, they also have one. In Japan, they have Tomakomai hub, yeah, which they already operated since 2016. So it's not new. And then Tangguh UCC project, this is in Indonesia, as well as Sunda Asri Basin hub in West Java. Regional, Malaysia has collabed with South Korea. They have come up with the call regional collaboration. In August 2022, Petronas already signed an MOU with South Korea, and they have established what they call the Shafat CCS project. Yeah, so do your research on this. You can find out more information. In China, also they have Jungar Basin, so you can research more on this. Just to give you an idea, they already have this ongoing. It's not something new. Yeah. You apart from the carbon capture, you also have macroalgae biofixation, where they use microalgae as the carbon sequestration to absorb the carbon from photosynthesis of the algae, so they reduce it. But the only challenge with macroalgae is space consuming. Yeah, so you need a lot of space to grow this microalgae, and this is also another research area that you can pursue, because it's very infancy stage in Malaysia. Not many research has been done on this. Low carbon cement. Cement has now been graded as based on this scale, so low carbon rating and high carbon rating. So if you work in a construction industry, you will be able to be exposed in terms of what type of cement they use, but they are already existing in the market for low carbon cement. Yeah. Carbon credit, this is something that I have mentioned to you earlier. Okay, moving forward, this is, I think, the last section of my presentation. I would like to share with you, I did mention this to you earlier, carbon credit. You remember the formula mathematics I mentioned to you earlier? Emission minus reduction is equals to net zero. So if your net zero is not zero, meaning that A minus B is C and C is not zero, so you can offset your C with carbon credits, meaning that you purchase from an organization who have negative credit and purchase that to zero rise your emission. So that's allowed, but that's still new in Malaysia. Apart from carbon credit, you also have biodiversity credit, but this is very, very infancy. It has not been developed yet, so I do not want you to be bogged down by this, but it's sufficient for you to know it exists, yeah? So when you talk about carbon credit and biodiversity credit, you have in between where there is interlink between the two. And nature-based solution is something that is upcoming, as I mentioned to you earlier. A minus B equal to C. If you C is not zero, then you can offset that with carbon credit or nature-based solution. Nature-based solution is more on sequestration of carbon using forests as a carbon sink. So that's called nature-based solution, yeah? So some emerging regulation in Malaysia by 2026, as we speak for this year, the government has already announced that they intend to introduce carbon tax in Malaysia. And the main audience will be energy and construction industry. Yeah. So if you work with this industry, you cannot run away from carbon tax when you graduate. Yeah. Carbon tax in Japan has been very advanced. They have already implemented in 2012. In Singapore, they already implemented as well since 2022. They started with 5 Sing dollar. They're going to increase to 80 Sing dollar by 2030. So that's how expensive carbon tax will be. So this is to show with you that actually carbon tax is already been implemented in all developed countries and it has been emerging in developing countries. Next is what are the growing EMS focus. So we talk about environmental management system, we talk about risk management, we talk about the importance of integrating the EMS and in the risk management. And we talk about the emerging technologies. And the last but not least, we cannot dismiss by talking about what's coming up. That these two elements will be the main focus that you need to understand when you graduate and work with industries. Yeah. So number one is artificial intelligence. So this is the buzzword that has been going through AI lah. I think what's applicable to you as student is ChatGPT and cloud, right? When you're doing your thesis and whatnot. But AI is bigger than that in industry. For example, we have one asset in the North Sea where we're using AI to map the environmental pollution in that asset. And with that data, we are able to zoom to identify where is the hotspot for fugitive emission. So that's how AI has helped us to identify unseen emission and be able to reduce that emission. So that's how powerful AI is in environmental management system. But blockchain technology is important as well, because why blockchain is important? You will need blockchain to measure the embodied carbon in all steps of the supply chain of your industry. So from the raw material to production of your products and services, you need to measure your GHG emission, and you can only do that by blockchain technology. So that's something that I wanted you to think in your mind. AI and blockchain will be something that you will come across when you work with the industry. Yeah. Right. So the last but not least, this is my last slide for your information, and we will stop nicely at 4:45 so that I can give you the 15 minutes for Q&A. Is that I will leave you with a call to action. If you notice this, it's A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so A stands for aspiration, meaning you as a student or lecturer of UNIMEC, you need to have that aspiration to play your role to strengthen the EMS within the organization that you work with. You need to have the boldness to ensure that whatever you believe in is being transacted into actions. And commitment is very important, because commitment is not just me, it's not just about you. You need to get everybody in the circle to be committed to your agenda. Determine, very important. When you talk about driving EMS, you will come to, like cycles of ups and downs, because not many people believe in it. So you need to be strong, to be determined and push your agenda forward. Always set excellence as your goal, because at the end of the day, when you talk about environmental management system, you must achieve excellence. Yeah. And for the future, your goalpost must always keep your mind EMS is at your core. EMS is your goalpost. So when you kick a ball, it must go into that goalpost so that you can, kick a goal successfully. Yeah. So I think with that, I hope that I've been able to conclude my presentation in these 2 hours to give you an oversight view and insights of EMS in the industry, so that you'll be able to have an overview of the importance of EMS, linking to sustainability, doing a risk assessment, and integrating the EMS into risk assessment and setting a reasonable goal for it. So with that, I think that is my last slide. Thank you. Back to you, Puan Farida.
Okay, thank you, Puan Farida. Puan Sarima, sorry. Okay, thank you, Puan Sarima, for the a very good experience sharing, and I'm sure that this session have given all of us a clear perspective on how environmental management system continue to evolve together with ESG. And Puan Sarima shared a very valuable insight, okay, which relates on the relationship between EMS and ESG, the importance of governance and enterprise risk management, okay, relates on the climate change and net zero commitments, global sustainability framework, okay, such as a Paris Agreement and the SDG, as well as emerging technologies including hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, low carbon fuel, carbon credit, and AI-driven environmental monitoring. And I believe one of the strongest message from today's webinar is MS should not be viewed as a cost, but as an opportunity for the organization to strengthen resilient, enhance reputation, improve stakeholders' confidence, and create sustainable long-term value. So I would like to open to the to this session to the participants. Okay, open the question and answer session. Okay, for all the participants. If you are wants to ask any questions, okay, you may raise your hands and just open your mic and just answer the questions, or you may write down the question in the chat box, so I can go through the questions and read along with Puan Sarima. Is there any question?
No, I think you can ask me anything, because at the end of the day, I am very glad that you guys are going to graduate and go into industry and you're going to work fresh. So anything that you have, just ask me, from, even if it's not so related to EMS, so I can help to answer your question, yeah, in my best capacity.
Okay, since we are waiting for the others for the questions, maybe I just proceed with introduction, or just one intro questions for Puan Sarima. Okay, it's about student career exposure lah. Okay, so for students who are interested to build career in sustainability and ESG in future, okay, what skills or competency should they have or starting to develop from the university level, in your perspective, or as to the best of your knowledge with your current experience?
Okay, thank you, Puan Farida, for the question. I think it's a very important question. One of the most important skill is an analytical skill, because let me share with you in terms of the ladder of going into sustainability. One is that you go into the technical skill, or the other one is going to management skill. Management is general, right? So if you choose to be practicing your engineering knowledge, you want it to be in the technical, you can grow and follow the technical skill. When I say technical skill, you're looking into being a climate analyst, a data analyst, GHG analyst, GHG specialist, because there's a data center that is looking into that. If you wanted to go into management, that's where I am in management, is that you need to have analytical skill. Analytical skills meaning that you must have the ability to crunch data, to crunch numbers, and be able to formulate actions and strategies for your management, because at the management level, you'll be fed by data and numbers by your technical team, right? Because, for example, now I have under me, I have the climate change team, I have the sustainable development team, data analyst. So all these people are reporting to me. So when these numbers comes to me, I need to crunch the data and numbers to formulate the actions and the strategies for the management. So analytical skill is very important, but I think being from engineering faculty, you have the advantage because engineers have the advantage of being critical and analytical. So, in my opinion, being an engineer by training, I take that as an advantage to me because we have that flair to be able to analyze data, numbers, and to read between the lines to make a judgment from these numbers. So to answer your question, I think analytical skill is very crucial. Others will follow suit from that. Yeah.
So thank you, Puan Sarima. So for the students, okay, so make sure you have to strengthen your technical skills and enhance your analytical skills, okay, to ensure that you are relevant in the industries, especially for the future environmental engineers, okay. So any questions from the participants, from the students, and maybe from our staffs, lecturers? Okay, jika tak ada soalan lain, maybe one more question from me. Okay, maybe it's related to the our current situation nowadays. Okay, it's about on the about the crisis US and Iran. Okay, so with the ongoing geopolitical instability, okay, so many organizations are considering long-term energy security strategies. So what is your opinion about could this conflict, okay, become a catalyst for faster net zero commitment and greener transportation systems globally, since maybe we are moving from the fossil fuels transportation to the EV transport? What is your opinion?
Okay. In fact, Farida, I think that's a very expensive question. I think it's a $1 million kind of question. My answer is very simple. If you look at the risk that has been met by WEF, it is actually very salient that, you know, like geopolitical risk is the top in terms of the risk mapping, right? When you look at the simple mathematics of the risk now, is that oil and energy oil is energy security, right? And energy security guarantees food security because simple je. If you go to the market, nak beli ikan ke, nak beli sayur ke apa semua, we need to drive. We need to not even drive or take a motorbike to go to reach more from point A to point B, right? And that involves fossil or fuel. So if there is a disruption in terms of the energy security, it will be a domino impact to the other value chain, like food chain, you know, security. For example, the fishermen who needs to go to the sea to catch fish, they need diesel as well, right? So if the diesel is expensive, maybe they will reduce their frequency from going to the sea 5 times a week to maybe 2 to 3 times a week. Hence, there is a little reduction of fish supply in the market, and hence the price will go up and consumer has to pay for it. So the disruption in energy security will definitely disrupt our food security and will have an impact in terms of our economic security as well. So it's a simple mathematics. So if we put that in a pyramid, E, S, and G, meaning that the environmental and the social and the governance will be impacted. We have no other way to escape from there, because this war will create a disruption to the energy security for sure. If not short, mid, or long term. I hope I answer your question.
Okay, thank you, Puan Sarima, for that valuable insight from your side. I think that is the best answer lah. Okay, for that issues. Okay, current in this current situation. So okay, maybe we can. Okay, we have another questions. Okay, from the chat box. So in the chat box from Muhammad Nashiran, okay, this is our students. He asked about, in your experience, what is the biggest challenge companies face when integrating ESG and net zero goals into their environmental management system? What is the biggest challenge companies face when integrating ESG and net zero goals into their EMS?
Okay, I would say that my top 3 challenge, number 1 is budget. When you talk about, as I mentioned to you earlier, environmental management system is not free. You always have to invest. You need to have a facility. You need to have a system in place. If it's not software, hardware, or even resources, that is an operational cost to the company. So normally management will have a lot of debate on why we need to do this. So you as an engineer, you need to, as I said to you, your aspiration, you need to be you need to defend what you believe in, right? If it's the right thing to do, you need to defend your plan in your budget. So that's number 1. Small is monetary. The second thing is pushbacks. When you work in the industry, I think it's a totally different planet from university. Okay, in the industry, in the company, whether it's small or big, you have to imagine that you're working in in a different planet, where you have it's like a different country. So you have your manager, you have your supervisors, and whatnot. So you may have believers in what you're doing, and you may have pushbacks, those non-believers. When I say non-believers, are those who always object your plan. You will have very minimal supporters, but you have more objectors. So to your question, I would say that these are the 2 hurdles you have to cross. One is money, the other one is people. So my suggestion to you is that when you wanted to propose an improvement plan to improve your environmental performance, make sure it's a rigid plan. It shows a financial benefit to the company to shut off the economic objectives. The other one is to show in your plan, especially to these non-believers, that your plan will benefit the company more than your department or unit. So my suggestion to you is that you need to be tactical in your plan when you try to propose an environmental management plan. So that has been the conservative traditional challenge I face in the 6 companies I've been working. I've been working in Sandabi, I work in public sector, I work with MNC and PLC. So across all companies, big or small, that has been the common challenge that I face. Money and non-believers. So you need to ensure whenever you want to propose your plan, make it a tactical plan where you show the benefits, not in quantitative, not in qualitative, but in quantitative benefits to the company. So from there, they will be able to support you better before you propose your plans. Yeah, I hope I answer your question, Muhammad.
Yes, of course. Money is a king. Okay. Without money, we can do anything. Okay, to improve or even to improve our environment. So as we come to the end of today's webinar session, I would like to express sincere appreciation and heartfelt thanks to our distinguished speaker, Puan Sarima, for the outstanding and insightful sharing session for this afternoon. Puan Sarima has shared a vast expertise excellently, particularly on the integration of the environmental management system, ESG practices, government, risk management and sustainability in today's industrial environment. And I believe the session has provided valuable exposure and meaningful insight to all participants. And we are truly honored and grateful for our time, experience, and inspiring knowledge sharing today by Puan Sarima. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank to all lecturers, staff, students, and participants from various departments. As I take note here, about 67 participants, the highest number in this session today, and from various departments throughout UNIMAP. Okay, so thanks to all of you. Hopefully, the knowledge and discussion shared today will continue to benefit us and inspire greater awareness towards sustainability and environmental responsibility in our respective field. With that, I would like to hand over this session to lifelong learning team for the photo session, attendance matters, and further announcement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Puan Farida, for the moderation of the webinar. So today we are lucky to have a good sharing session with our speaker, Puan Sarima Talib. So thank you very much to our speaker for an informative sharing session. Now we'll have a photo session. So please, everyone, please turn on your webcam if possible. Thank you. Okay, let's wait for a while. Okay, in count of 3, 2, and 1. Okay, just one more, I think. The count of 3, 2, 1. Okay. So again, thank you very much, everyone. To conclude, thank you for joining this webinar session today. We hope that you will found that this webinar informative and helpful. So if you are interested in learning more, feel free to join us again for our next webinar session, which will be updated on our respective faculty social media page, such as Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So do not forget to follow us for more info. Links can be found in the message box. With that, thank you for joining us and have a great day. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Doctor.